Down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Well, I've got some interesting things going on tonight, apparently. First, I couldn't get my software that usually generates my special effects, sounds, and things like that to go. And now my audio seems to be cutting in and out. Hopefully everything's okay on your guys' end. Welcome everyone to another edition of the Whiskey Musings broadcast. I am the cat who is not in a hat and your host, Rick. So this weekend is a pretty big holiday weekend. I mean, as far as weekends go, we usually get 2 days. This is a 3-day weekend because of the holiday that we have. And so, Memorial Day is a great time to gather with friends and family. And of course, our current situation may change some of that. But one thing that I did want to bring up is that a lot of people think Memorial Day, they automatically assume that it is a military, something that we do for the military, that we say, happy Memorial Day or whatever. And the whole purpose of Memorial Day originally was to ensure that the people who died during World War II got memorialized. And so one of the things that I think it's kind of been lost over time is that people have felt that Memorial Day is not only about the soldiers who have died, who have given their lives for this great country, but also that it's okay to say things like, "Hey, Veterans Day," and Happy Memorial Day to veterans and things like that. I will kind of want to set the record straight from this. So there's 3 holidays that have to deal with our military, 3 major ones. There's actually a bunch of other ones, but there's 3 major ones that pretty much everybody knows about somewhat. Obviously, you have Veterans Day and you have Memorial Day. Now, Memorial Day is designed for all of us to remember people who have lost their lives defending this country. And it started out just as World War II, but it has since expanded into more than just World War II. It's now pretty much anybody who has given the ultimate sacrifice in defense of this country. And that ultimately is the reason for the holiday. So as you sit and enjoy your barbecues and your family gatherings or whatever it is that you're going to do, take a few moments to reflect about the literally thousands upon thousands of soldiers who have given up the ultimate price for our freedom and for our ability to do some of the things that we do today. Now, as far as the other holidays go, I mean, Veterans Day is obviously by its name for veterans. And so when you're dealing with Veterans Day, when you come to Veterans Day in November, that is when it is appropriate to go to a veteran and say, thank you for your service. Today is all about the ones, Monday is all about the ones who have given up their lives in defense of the country. So from that standpoint, then we also have a day where we can talk to or congratulate or thank the other soldiers, the soldiers that are currently serving, and that is Armed Forces Service Day. At least I think I got that right, or Armed Forces Day. That actually happened a couple weeks ago, so it's right before Memorial Day. And for that day, it's appropriate to go and thank a service member for their service. So those are the 3 major holidays: Armed Forces Day, Veterans Day, and Memorial Day. And in order, it's dealing with the ones who are currently serving, the ones that have served, and the ones that have made the ultimate sacrifice and died. Now, for those of you that want to fly a flag, the proper etiquette on Memorial Day is that you fly it at half staff until noon, and then at noon you raise it to full staff. Now that is the one and only day where half staff is not appropriate for the entire day. And that you can actually look that up. Go ahead and Google it. If you want, take a look. But that was an interesting factoid that I found out in displaying my flags on Memorial Day, was the fact that at noon it is supposed to raise to full staff, and then it gets taken down as normal at the end of the day. So I wanted to pass that along to all of you in regards to Memorial Day. So first of all, that it is a memorial to those who have lost their lives in our services. And it's not just, World War II, that's where it started, but it's beyond that. It's everybody who has paid for our freedom with their lives. And so if you get an opportunity, if you are religious, say a prayer. If you if you have a service member or something like that who has died, a relative in the past that has died, even if you don't, go and visit a memorial, go and visit maybe go into a cemetery or something like that, and pay homage to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice so that we can live free. And that's ultimately what Memorial Day is all about. So now, like I said before, my sound effects generator program isn't functioning right now. So normally I'd be playing something patriotic at this point. But for now, I'm just going to say, this is for you, those who have passed, who have given their lives, paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country for our freedom. Okay. Now, another memorial that hits a little bit closer to home happened this past week. For those who have lived in the Pacific Northwest for most, if not all, of their lives, there was a significant event that occurred 40 years ago. And what I'm about to relay to you is the story from the perspective of a very young man who lived through that experience, not necessarily up close and personal, but close enough that his memories are further and inexorably ingrained within his mind. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a few minutes to kind of go through and do a little bit of a slideshow and a little bit of a relaying of a story about what this young individual's memories today are from that fateful day. This in the background now is a picture of Mount St. Helens, as she was prior to that fateful day in 1980. Now, one of the things that I can recall from the time leading up to that fateful day was the fact that a lot of activity started. And it started with the U.S. Geological Survey people and some of the forest people getting excited about all of the things that were going on. And the things that I remember were how they were measuring the seismographs. They were measuring how big bulges happened in there was a bulge on the side of the mountain, and they were steadfastly studying this new growth in the mountain. And one of the things that they did start doing is they started closing down things about all of the people that lived up there. There was a gentleman up there by the name of Harry Truman, not Harry S. Truman, our former president, but Harry Truman. He was named after that. And that gentleman had a lodge on Spirit Lake. Now, Spirit Lake was a fishing resort, and very large lake that was sat roughly around the foot of the mountain, maybe a little bit higher than that, but it was a popular destination spot for people to go in the summertime. And this gentleman, Harry Truman, he ran and owned the Spirit Lake Lodge. Now, one of the things about the impending danger that was going on was the fact that the officials at the time were imploring with him to go ahead and leave. And what made him so sensational, I mean, outside, of course, from the eventual result, but what made him so sensational is the fact that he defiantly stood there and said, this mountain ain't gonna go nowhere. She's been here longer than I have, and she's not going anywhere until I die, kind of an attitude. And I'm sort of paraphrasing some of the things that he said. He was a very colorful character. He had 19 cats, all of which he kept around his place. He was very adamant about not leaving, regardless of what everybody was telling him. All of these scientists were explaining to him that the mountain was dangerous and things were going bad, and that you really ought to leave. And they cleared out some of the towns and everything else surrounding the mountain, and they were able to get rid of predominantly most of the people that were out there. And so on the morning of this spectacular event, the morning broke in just this clearest blue sky from what I can remember. And keep in mind, my perspective is basically I grew up in the Northwest Hills of Portland. So from that standpoint, I am not anywhere near this mountain, nowhere close. But the thing that I recall from that day was going outside and remembering how clear it was. It was so clear there wasn't a cloud in the sky. There literally was not a single cloud in the entire sky. It was a cobalt blue. It was just absolutely beautiful for May and springtime in the Northwest. It was an absolutely beautiful day. And pretty soon, toward about mid-morning, a little earlier than mid-morning, I remember looking around, and as I looked north, I remember seeing a cloud. Now, not knowing what that cloud was obviously because, as far as my age, I was very young at the time, between second and third grade. So from that standpoint, it was very odd to me to see this cloud. And what was interesting about the cloud was the fact that it didn't hang in the sky like normal clouds would, to where, you could see underneath the cloud. This cloud seemed to rise from the hill that I was looking up at to see this thing. And so what had happened apparently was early that morning, if I remember correctly, it was right around 9, little after 9 in the morning. And this is another shot, and I think actually that the lake underneath it is actually part of Spirit Lake that's right underneath the mountain. And I apologize for the resolution. This was the best resolution that I think they had at the time. But at right around 9:15, 9:18, I believe it was 9:18 in the morning, the mountain decided to blow. And I think this is probably the first photo of the mountain erupting. And as you can see, it was an explosive eruption. It's so explosive. Now, to give you some perspective, we're actually looking at this from about a northeast angle, back toward the mountain. And what you're seeing is the north face of the mountain itself. Now, something to keep in mind, this was the second tallest mountain in the Cascades at the time, second only to Rainier at the time. And so when she decided to blow and take off, as you can see in this next shot here, the mountain, the whole part of the mountain here kind of crumbled and just dropped straight out. So the whole north face of the mountain dropped down and just slid off the mountain and turned into just a mud flows. There wasn't lava necessarily, but there was what they call lahar, which is very hot, boiling water and mud, because of the fact that the explosion, the heat created from the explosion, instantaneously melted any of the glaciers that were part of the mountain, and it just slid. The north face just slid right off, and as you can see here in the image, there's clouds that are going up into the sky, and it was one of these clouds that I actually saw. And this cloud is filled with dirt and dust and ash from the explosion and the resulting landslide and the drop of all of that entire north face just slid right down, and it just went faster than you could have even imagined in terms of the speed at which this thing was traveling. And what it did is ultimately it started just spewing ash all over the place, just sending it straight up. Now, granted, there was a northeastern kind of wind, so it blew everything kind of north and east from the mountain. And so places like, Spokane and somewhat Tri-Cities area, those areas got hit pretty hard. But once the plume got up into the upper atmosphere, it sort of spread out, and it went across the entire blue sky, that from what I can remember, and it expanded like a large storm cloud. Now, keep in mind, I mean, I don't remember too much of this other than the fact that, my mother and my sister, they went shopping down in Portland. And down in Portland, in fact, it used to be called the Montgomery Mall, but they went down to the Montgomery Mall in Portland, and sorry, throat's dry. And they went down and they went shopping, and I can remember them calling us and saying, "Hey, the mountain blew." And the photos that you see of the mountain blowing, many of them came from a lot of photographers that were actually posted on the cemetery that was part of the Northwest Hills of Portland. And there was hundreds of them all along Burnside. There was a cemetery up at the top, and they were up on the hills, and they were all focused north. They were all pointing toward the mountain. And these photographers, a lot of them got, spectacular photos and things like that. But the thing that I really and truly remember is that how fast that beautiful day turned to gray, and how quickly it expanded across the sky. Now, the funny thing about it is that it was just a monster of an explosion. And as you can see in this photo, I mean, there's like just a huge, almost funnel cloud like plume, and it rose, I think something like, I've heard statistics of close to like 80,000 feet in the air. And if you think about that, planes usually fly around 35,000 feet or so. This thing, it blew and it rose incredibly high. So it scattered ash throughout pretty much the entire Pacific Northwest for the most part. Idaho got hit, Eastern Washington got hit, northern part of Oregon got hit. And I can remember in the days following how the ash came down, and it reminded me so much of snow, but yet as it landed, it was gray. It was a fine gray, I don't even know. I mean, other than ash, that's the only thing I can really call it. It would be like somebody burnt down, even just wood doesn't even come close. I mean, I've seen ash from wood, and it's more of a lighter gray. This was a darker gray, and it just sort of got spread over everything. And it was so pervasive everywhere that we ended up to where we didn't have school because they couldn't run any of the vehicles within the city for safety reasons, because the filters, the air filters, would get clogged with this stuff. I mean, this stuff was incredibly heavy, and it was incredibly, even though the ash itself was fine, it was incredibly thick once it got mashed together. And we would have to go outside in masks, bandanas, very much like we do today, but only from the standpoint of we couldn't breathe in the stuff. And we couldn't drive. The school buses couldn't go anywhere. In fact, many of the city buses were having problems. They would start out in the morning and they would end up getting broke down by mid-morning, almost midday, because of the fact that their filters would get all clogged with this ash. And this ash, if you're thinking about this ash was not just like a light dusting. This ash was a incredible thick layer. It was at least, if I could, I don't remember measuring it, but it was at least an inch or two. And it covered everything. It covered everything. I mean, windows on cars, it covered the cars, it covered so much stuff. And growing up, the place that I lived at, we had a pool. And that pool, of course, it was an outdoor pool, and we didn't have like an overhead cover or anything like that. We did have a cover for it. It was a solar cover that just sort of laid on the top of the water. But that ash was so thick and so prevalent everywhere that it got into the pool. And when it got into the pool water actually turned black. And I'm talking about like the black that's right here above my head, right up here. It turned black. It was that disgusting, really. And it took us several years, and we never, from up until the time that I moved out, we never got that pool clean. We flushed the pipes, we changed the filters, we did everything we could, and that stuff was so fine it got into every crack and crevice of the pool filter system. And even when we got it to its cleanest point, it still came out cloudy. And this was years later. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that this ash really was. Now, in terms of the lahar itself, so obviously we had a couple days off, but in terms of the lahar itself, it just wreaked havoc on the rivers and everything around it. And the thing that I remember is the Toutle River. The Toutle River actually has a part of I-5 that goes across it, and that's Interstate 5. That's the major interstate between Portland and Seattle. And the explosion and the resulting lahar, the eruption and the resulting lahar, actually damaged the bridge somewhat. And it made it to where the bridge itself was shut down. And they went ahead and they made it impassable. Well, you couldn't very well go east because going east was going to take you right into Mount St. Helens. So what they had to do is they had to move around and go to the west and move trucks and things like that off to the west side and head down. I think at the time it was Highway 30, State Route 30 on the Oregon side of the Columbia River. I think they had to reroute through there to get to Portland. And for, I don't know, several months after the eruption, they went and they had to dredge the Toutle River. Now, one of the things that they did was when they dredged it, they actually started piling up all of the stuff that they pulled out of the Toutle River, and they piled it, especially right there by the bridge, and they piled that on both sides of I-5. And to this day, at least the last time that I took a drive down I-5, one of those piles still exists. And this is 40 years later. And I actually saw probably about 5 years ago where they were starting to cut into that pile with a backhoe, and you could still see the ash in the pile. Now, granted, I think it's on private property. I don't think you can actually go to it anymore. But the fact of the matter is that this, and these are massive piles. These aren't like small piles. These are piles that rise up probably a good 20, 30 feet from the ground. And it's just amazing to me that such an event. Now, this has been recorded as the most deadliest volcano in U.S. history. 57 people lost their lives. Not only was it Harry Truman, but it was several forest rangers who were trying to get people out. There were a few photographers. There was a very famous videographer who went up there, and he actually had his camera running during the entire time that he was trying to escape from the cloud that was overtaking him from the mountain. And I remember watching it maybe a year or two later in school, and you know, just the awe of the fact that how dark it got and how quickly that happened. That footage may still even be available, but this is a catastrophic but yet fascinating event, especially one considering coming from a person like myself who actually was there when it happened. And this photo here is actually a photo that my father has. I still have it somewhere. But this particular photo here is during that time, during that explosion. And I have a framed photo of it. My dad had it. I got it from him after he died. This was a very famous shot that was put out there by a lot of different people. Or not a lot of different people, but he put it out there, and a lot of different people have grabbed it because it is just absolutely astounding as to the photography, the clarity, the incredible power that was shown by Mount St. Helens at the time. So I wanted to show you, and let me see if it goes back or not. Yeah, it does. So I originally wanted to show you what it looks like now, but a recovery does happen. And for many, many years, there were photos taken, and I know of a very large organization, lumber organization, that has some photos of these. I've seen them in their offices. I've seen them where they show the devastation of what it looked like afterward. And I mean, we're talking trees, 25, 30 feet wide that are just ripped out by the roots, and they're all laid down flat, pointing north because of the force of the explosion. And then what it looks like as it's been growing, they've been taking photos as it's been growing, and the recovery of that area. Now, if you get a chance to go up there, I have to admit, even though I live in the area, I have not gone up there. Maybe that's something that I might want to do sometime this year in the summertime. But the recovery, I mean, I've seen photos where there's flowers and there still aren't any trees, any big trees like what there used to be. The forests of the entire area, especially on the north side, they are gone. They were literally gone. But the photographs of the renewal and the coming of life and the return of life, and even today they're still talking about different things like the elk and the deer populations coming back into the area and that kind of stuff. And we still have a dome growing in there today. In fact, the USGS has a camera on it. You can go to their website. You can find it. Again, Google it. You can find the website. You can take a look at what the caldera, the area around that got blown off, looks like today. And there's still a dome growing inside. So she is not done, but she definitely let herself be known on that day, May 18th, 1980. And I can remember that day clearly, very clearly. And I hope that even in my older age that I can do it again, that I can still remember that day. It was a tragic day, but it was a fascinating day. And for those of you who are interested in geology, that was fascinating too. Just the fact that they had a event that doesn't occur very often, but when it does, it makes such an impact on the lives of the people around it. And I feel very, very fortunate to have been in the region at the time. I'm also very sad at the 57 people that lost their lives. And so, Memorial Day is, and this is kind of why I tie it together. Memorial Day is about the soldiers that have lost their lives, but we also have civilians that have lost their lives too. And so thinking about, Memorial Day and thinking about Mount St. Helens, they're pretty close to one another in the month. And this being the 40th anniversary, I just felt it would be really, really nice to go ahead and talk about that. So I'm going to open up the phone lines now. If you have something, if you want to talk a little bit about Memorial Day, or if you want to talk about, Mount St. Helens, if you have different experiences, different things, different feelings. I mean, I've got a couple things here in the chat that have popped up here about this event, but there's different perspectives from people within the environment with regards to this. So, again, phone lines are open. I'm willing to discuss it, but the impact of that day, and just the fact that things like the ash that was coming down, how it covered everything, and it appeared, for the most part, outside of the color, it looked like everything had snowed. The impact. Oh, even like, for an example, my third grade teacher at the time, she gathered a bunch of it up, and she was very artistic. Let's say we were doing a lot of clay projects and paintings and things like that at my elementary school. And so she took the ash and she actually mixed it with some of the paint. And so there were times when I actually was able to utilize, and I kind of wish I still had some of this, but there were times that I was actually able to utilize the actual ash mixed in with the paint. And there were other people that I know of that gathered ash and put them in bottles and have held it for a while. And then there's others who have, maybe lost it over time, or something's happened to it over time. But there were lots of things that classes, anyone who is an artist, pretty much, especially a teacher, pretty much utilized this in an amazing sense, to be able to go and look at this thing and, watch this amazing event unfold. And again, I mean, it certainly affected me. I mean, it kind of got me thinking about it, and definitely I actually studied some geology in college, and understanding volcanoes and things like that. And so, of course, we did a case study on Mount St. Helens, just because of the fact that it was so close. And we talked about the different types of volcanoes and all of the events leading up to it, and even where it goes today. So today there are some conversations about what's next, because we all live in a very volatile part of the world. We don't realize it, I don't think, a lot, but we do live in a volatile part of the world. And part of that volatility comes from the fact that we are on what's called the Ring of Fire. So, from that sense, it is just an amazing experience, I think. And just to be able to have gone through it and been able to be part of the event itself, and to have it impact. I mean, my kids did a thing on Mount St. Helens. My son did at one point in school. And so we were able to pull out the photo that I was showing you before. We were able to pull out that photo and have him take it into class, and the teacher put it up for display. So anyway, all right. So looks like I have a caller, and I'm going to go ahead and bring them on. Yes. Hello there.
Hello.
Kirk. How are you?
Not bad.
Can you hear me okay?
This is a very good topic. I hear you just fine.
All right. Perfect.
Everything's good.
All right. Excellent.
So, no, like I said in the chat, I have, my dad grew up in Castle Rock, which is, a stone's throw from St. Helens. And so we would go up there quite frequently and, just see all the devastation that happened. So I've seen pictures from, downtown Castle Rock, which is a very small town, but everything's just pitch black. it's noon and the streetlights are on.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I can remember that.
Oh yeah, because personally, I was oblivious to everything going on because I was 9. But I remember, the day after there was ash everywhere, I thought it snowed. Saved some up. It's around here somewhere. But my grandfather worked for Weyerhaeuser, so he had access to all the old logging sites, the back roads that no one else can get into.
Oh yeah, yep, definitely.
And we go in some of these places, yeah, and it's just incredible. I mean, I see houses or parts of houses where they shouldn't be because they've been dragged downriver. Logging equipment just mangled,
mm-hmm.
and the gray water line extending 15 to 20 feet above my head was just very surreal being in that, knowing what had just happened.
Yeah. Now, I totally hear you there. One of the things that I think that some people don't know, have you ever seen the movie Dante's Peak?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if you caught it, but I'm pretty sure that they actually utilized some of the imagery from Mount St. Helens as a part of that movie. I actually think that that the whole scene about the bridge and the guy getting stuck on the bridge and that might have come from the idea of the Toutle River, and the I-5 bridge. I think that there are certain images, if you go back and watch it, there are certain images that if you take a close enough look, you can actually see where the resemblance to Mount St. Helens is just stunning. And I would not be surprised if the filmmakers actually did something with that when Dante's Peak was actually exploding.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. That was that 90s movie? I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it had Pierce Brosnan in it. I think he was like the main character, and then it was after the Terminator movies because God, I can't think of her name. The one that played Sarah Connor, she was the other actress headliner in the film. But yeah, so if you get a chance, go back and at the point where it's erupting, I actually think, believe it or not, I actually think that this particular image right here, the one that I'm showing on screen right now, is actually a part of, they did something to it and they actually, made it move and that kind of stuff. But I actually think this image is in it. The one with the gray image.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they took actual footage from the news cameras at the time and put it in there.
Yeah. Now, do you remember, Harry Truman in any of the interviews? I mean, I think you did. You mentioned it, but yeah. I
do remember that.
It was definitely interesting how the man just basically stood up and said, "No, I'm not leaving. I'm just not going to leave." And I don't know if that was just stubbornness on his part, probably. But to think of the fact that here was this guy.
Most definitely.
Yeah, well, I mean, but think about this. I mean, he was there one day talking to the cameras, and then pretty much, a day or two later, when the cameramen and everything else were taken out because of the impending disaster, he was gone, and everything that he loved was just completely buried. I mean, Spirit Lake,
he was the first casualty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's stories. So there's a gentleman who actually lives up here where I live, who was there and had some of his footage taken by people. And he actually created an independent film that documents the days afterward because he actually went in. So the story is for him is that he went in to go and document some of the changes that had happened. And he wanted to look at what it looked like after the eruption. And although it was still, spewing ash and things like that, nothing was the same. They took maps with them. Nothing was the same. They couldn't get their bearings at all on any of the maps because all of the features that you would normally pick were gone. And,
yeah.
And the magnetism from the mountain exploding all of that changed to where they couldn't even use their compasses. So they actually got lost. He and his cohorts got lost for like 2 or 3 days. And they finally found their way out. But they were supposed to fly in by chopper. They flew in by chopper. They got dropped off. They were supposed to go hike for a few miles or something like that, and then get picked up again. And they never made it to their destination because they couldn't find it. But just sitting, it's a big impact. It definitely was a big impact for me. I'm sure it was for you. You had a chance to actually go and see some of the things that I didn't. Now I've seen photographs, of the devastation, but you actually were in it. You walked in and you saw it. So
yeah, it's very surreal. And in the years following, you see the precautions they're taking for the next event. If you've ever been driving around mountainous areas and you see large bundles of rocks tied together basically with what looks like chicken wire, but more heavy duty, they were putting those, large stacks of those in the river as breaks for the next, lahar that come down the river.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, the other thing, too, I mean, Puyallup is like down just south of, or maybe not south, but right at the base of Mount Rainier. And there've been some speculation on Mount Rainier being the next one to go. So they have like all kinds of, evacuation routes are very well marked. They've got, lahar tests that kind of sound like tsunami warnings. And so it was just incredible. I mean, it's just the change that happened, from that. And, again, like I said, the Toutle River, that one of those piles still exists today. They had a pile on each side. They got rid of one, but the other side, I think, still exists. At least it did the last couple of years that I've gone down that way. So anyway.
And my grandparents bought a house on Silver Lake, they have a perfect spot that overlooks St. Helens. It's to the west of the mountain.
Right.
So you can't see the crater, which is on the northeast side.
Right.
Or north side. You can't see the crater, but that would have been a perfect spot to have witnessed that. I mean, you're far enough away, you don't get affected by it, but that would have been some show.
Yeah, it would have. But, I'm not too sure about the distance kind of thing because, this affected, there's photographs that I was searching for the ones that I found on Google. There's actually photographs of like the ash covering Spokane and stuff. And that's,
Oh, no. Yeah. You're still affected by the ash. I mean, just the explosion itself wouldn't have affected you.
Oh yeah. No. I don't think so. I mean, and actually where I live, I'm actually, we're kind of in the foothills area of, not necessarily foothills, but we're sort of in the shadow of like Mount Baker. And oftentimes there's this one spot that as I drive down the one of the main roads, there's this one spot that in the summertime, when it's perfectly clear, you can see the tip of the mountain and the mountain looks extremely close to us. And I look at that and I know that I'm far enough away, or at least I would certainly hope that we're far enough away. But at the same time, you also don't know the explosive power that is available within the earth and how much, I mean, depending upon which way that thing blows, if it ever does within my lifetime, just which way that thing blows, how much of an effect it would have. Because even here where I live, they talk about glacial till making up most of the soil. So that you're in the range of, the glaciers coming off the mountain and stuff. That's the closest mountain to us from that standpoint. So it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, well, right now it's a waiting game for see which mountain is going to go next. Because Rainier is a possibility and Hood is actually an active volcano.
Oh, they all
are. It has an active vent.
They all are. They're all.
Well, I know Rainier was actually active.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's kind of step into the science here for a little bit. They consider all of them active but they're all dormant is what they're called. So it's not like Crater Lake. Crater Lake is like dead and buried. I mean, that thing, there's no way that thing's ever going to go off again as far as they can tell. But pretty much everything else within the Cascade range, for the most part, is considered active, just dormant. So I don't know. I mean, they've been monitoring. I know they've been monitoring Rainier for seismic events that would indicate a potential eruption. They monitor some of the other ones, but I know that like Rainier and Hood, which are kind of on the opposite sides and are pretty big mountains by themselves. I actually think Adams is between St. Helens and Rainier, if I remember correctly. But I know that they've been watching both of them quite a bit. Now, whether or not they're actually, things are really, really active or not, I don't know. But I know that there's speculation that, yeah, definitely either Hood or Rainier. Could you imagine if Hood went off?
Oh my God, that'd be so much devastation. I mean, I used to work at Timberline Lodge, and a few times I work at the top of the Palmer, which is the highest chairlift on the mountain, as far as I know. And if the wind's just right, you can smell the sulfur from Devil's Kitchen.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, I can remember going up to Timberline and skiing when I was a young kid. Mount Hood Meadows, also the other major ski resort on the island or on the mountain. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just and just its close proximity to Portland. Versus, Mount St. Helens is, for those that don't know, Mount St. Helens is kind of out in the boondocks a little bit. I mean, there's small towns and stuff around it, but it's not really situated near a major city. If you had something like Rainier or Hood, Rainier being close to Seattle, just south and east of Seattle, and Hood, which is close to Portland, Oregon, you would have, I think, potentially much more devastation, and a potential more body count than what Mount St. Helens had. Yeah,
because Mount Hood has a major highway going right over it, and there's
which one is that?
2 or 3 Memorial ski resorts. Well, really, you're going to test me now?
Well,
I don't remember, 30? But I know there's a.
Is it Highway 30? I can't remember.
I gotta pull up a map now. Thanks.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
I know it's gonna be homework.
Yeah, I'm good at that. I'm good at providing homework.
Okay, hold on. I live in a town called Rhododendron.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, government camp. Yeah, we used to stop at government camp on the way to Madras. Yeah. Oh, man. Highway 26. Looks like, yeah.
Oh, it is? It's 26. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember going east on 26.
30,
I remember
35.
west on 26 quite a bit.
Okay.
But...
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, we can reminisce. That's for next week on the other show.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, hey, you know what? And that is a perfect segue. So there again, so folks, there's another channel out there, and I'm just going to take a second just because Kirk brought it up. But there's another channel out there called Addie Law Crime, and she's on YouTube, and I have been invited to make an appearance there on next Friday on their Fun Fridays, and basically, I mean, the channel itself, they talk about trials and the law system and that kind of stuff, which, I had a fascination at one point. But that being said, that isn't the reason for me being there. Fun Fridays are basically for them are just sort of a release at the end of the week. They discuss a lot of different topics, and especially now because the trial system.
There are no trials going on.
There's nothing going on. So I'm going to make a plug for her, for that. And I'm going to make an appearance next week, or at least we're going to try, based on technology, of course, to make an appearance next week, and let me see how quickly and how effectively I can derail the entire show. Okay, that's my intent.
Oh, this should be fun.
Yeah, that is my intent. And Addie, I know you're
Oh,
listening.
okay.
So
How do you
guess what?
derail something that has no tracks?
You know what? I will find a way. Let me tell you, I will find a way. But anyway, all right. Well, that's cool. Well, thank you very much, Kirk, for calling in and giving us your memories.
Sure.
I'm sure that, though I do have one other question. So you said that you were able to get back into the logging roads. I mean, was I exaggerating when I was talking about, trees that were just massively huge, just blown over?
Oh, no. Oh, you were underselling it, really.
I was underselling
yeah.
it. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, now the one thing that I did find fascinating is the photographs that came out from that area after the trees had gotten blown down, that they were all going in the same direction. It was almost like somebody had just taken toothpicks and just like laid them out.
No, as you were talking about it, I was looking it up, and it's just, oh my god!
Physically,
it's incredible.
It is amazing, and I can't remember the circumference of the area that was affected, but I know that it was something like a couple of miles at least, if not more, that were affected by this. And you mentioned Weyerhaeuser. Weyerhaeuser owned a lot of that land out there, or at least had it in forestry rights. And so I can just imagine that the number of loss that they had due to that old growth timber that just got blown down for that area.
Tons of stuff gone.
Now I know that they went in and they cleaned it up, or they went in and they started cleaning it up and they replanted all of those trees. So hopefully within several years from now, they're going to have another forest there. But I also know that based on images that I've seen, it's not as forested as what it once was. Just because of the fact that the young, how long it takes trees to grow and things like that.
So I'm looking up the information. The near supersonic lateral blast loaded with volcanic debris caused devastation as far as 19 miles from the volcano.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought. I thought it was pretty close to like 15 miles at least. And even then I was kind of underselling it. So, 19 miles. Can you just imagine that? 19 miles? I mean, seriously, if Rainier blew off, I mean, I know that Portland is a ways away from Hood, but that's still... I mean, just imagine, because
there's still a lot of towns close by.
Well, yeah, not only that, but you got the Columbia River that runs right alongside there. Could you just imagine if the Lahar kept going into the Columbia and then the Columbia just filled up and pushed? I mean, the devastation would just be immense.
Oh, yeah. I just can't even think of that, because if it choked off the Columbia, which is a massive river. We used to sing songs about it in grade school.
Yeah, we did.
Roll on, Columbia, roll on.
I just thought it. As soon as you said that, I thought of that.
It would. Of course, I changed the words to use roll on, but we were kids.
Okay.
I just can't imagine a river like that being choked off and where all that water has to go, just everywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even so, for an example with Rainier has the Puyallup River, and the Puyallup River runs right down through Puyallup. And that whole area, I mean, every time I go down there to do work or to visit friends or whatever, I always think of that, because of the fact that the valley down there there really isn't any place to go necessarily other than up in some cases. But some of the roads that they have marked out as evacuation routes, I mean, they're only like 2-lane roads. They're like roads that are running through neighborhoods and such. I couldn't even imagine trying to get out of that area if something like that happened. And the devastation and how quickly it happened too. I mean, the thing you got to realize about Lahars is that it is an almost instantaneous liquefaction of mud and ice, things that rock and ice. And it's things that we normally take for granted as being solid. And the immense power and heat that is generated by the explosion just instantly turns this stuff into liquid. and it happens so quickly. I mean, you know, I don't know if you've seen it. Everybody's probably seen this, but you look at like the Hawaii, the Kilauea volcano when it blew off and sent a whole bunch of lava into the river. That's not the way that Mount St. Helens happened. Mount St. Helens had very little lava that actually spewed from the volcano. All of the devastation was all lahar. So,
Yeah.
you know, from that standpoint, I mean, it just even just thinking about like lava tends to move really slow because it is molten rock. And it takes a while to actually go, because you can look that up on Google as well. I mean, they had people who were sitting there and had their houses, and their houses were just slowly being eaten by the lava. But the lahar is something totally different. And so if that happens, I mean, it happens quickly. It's almost in a way of like a flash flood in a way. Yeah, it's just incredible. I do encourage people, though, if you haven't seen Dante's Peak, or even if you have, give it another shot and look at it, especially at the moment where the Dante mountain explodes and erupts. Take a look at that and look at some of the images. And if you have any memory of some of the images from Mount St. Helens, you're probably going to see some similarities. I mean, I may be talking just completely out of my rear end here, but I could swear that I saw images and footage that could have very easily come from the Mount St. Helens eruption in that movie. So anyway, thank you very much, Kirk. I appreciate the call. I appreciate you providing us with your insight, your feedback, your memories. So thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. You have a good night.
Bye. You too.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, I actually have 3 lines that are available. Just because I'm talking to somebody doesn't necessarily mean that I can't take another call. So let me go ahead, and now I got to do some cleanup work here. So if you'll excuse me for just a second. So we'll go ahead and we'll just leave that number on the line. Oh my goodness, we're almost up with our hour. So, hey, isn't that incredible? I do try to keep these to an hour, but if I get enough interaction, I certainly will join in. So if somebody does call in here in just a couple of minutes, I will go ahead, but I'm going to take a break for the second and just mention that this is the Whiskey Musings broadcast. I do it every single night, not every single night, every single week. At 8 p.m. on Saturdays. I do address different topics. If you have a suggestion of a topic for a show, please feel free to send me an email. Email me at rick@whiskeymusings.online or .net. And whiskey is the English, meaning the American spelling, WHISKEY, musings, MUSINGS, .online, ONLINE, or .net. Either one will get to me. So it's rick@whiskeymusings.online or .net. You can try and drop something on my YouTube channel. You can put a comment down there if you have a suggestion for a show, or if you are on Facebook and you happen to be one of my friends, go ahead and just send me a request there. Ken, I know that you sent me a list, and I swear I'm getting to it. I promise you. So it probably will be next week's topic. Don't know for sure what that topic's going to be. But anyway, so I hope you all have enjoyed the broadcast. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show, a little look back in the past. And don't forget, on Monday is Memorial Day. And Memorial Day is when we remember all the soldiers who have lost their lives, who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for us to live in freedom and for us to get a chance to do exactly what we are doing here tonight. Go ahead and remember to subscribe on my YouTube channel. Go ahead and follow me on Facebook. I do have a Whiskey Musings page, as well as on Twitter, which Twitter is actually backwards. It's Musings Whiskey, because somebody already had Whiskey Musings as the name, so it's at Musings Whiskey on Twitter. But anyway, give me a follow, subscribe, and we will go ahead and see you next week on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night.